Welcome to the social roundup with Sala right here on Relax Radio. Now, if you are someone who is loving the conversations we have at Relax Radio, do follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Engage with us. Tell us how your day has been. Tell us what you think we need to be talking about, and also engaging conversations with us, and tell us what you feel about what we are talking as well. We'd love to hear you engage in these conversations with us, and we'd love to have you on board with Relax Radio as well. And today we have something very interesting that we want to be discussing, and that is whether we should be having a rehabilitation system or a retribution system, right? Now, if you know, the criminal justice system in UK pushes for rehabilitation, and this has been since 1779, when the British government passed the Penitentiary Act, right? And this was to make rehabilitation part of the prison system as well, right? Now, as much as in the system, in the British government system, punishment has been an important element. Now it is being redefined, and rehabilitation is being made an important part of it as well, right? This is to correct someone rather than punish someone, right? Correction is more important than punishment, and this hasn't been the case. We haven't really been giving correction more attention than punishment. We always feel like when someone does something wrong, we need to punish them before we actually try to fix what could possibly be the root cause as to why they are behaving that way, right? So the UK justice system somehow basically manages to give rehabilitation the due attention it should be getting as well, right? So the purpose of a prison actually initially was to train people, to make them realize that what you did was wrong, and to hold them accountable for whatever they would have possibly done. And the justice system was really trying to focus on somehow managing and helping people fix what they are doing wrong in society. It is also to make sure that people don't continue to make the same mistake in society over and over again. So punishing someone would make someone else fear doing the making the same mistake. It would make them fear making the same mistake, and thereby end up getting punished for their mistake as well, right? So this is exactly why we have a prison system and a punishment system included in our justice system, right? But on the other hand, UK has over time realized that it is important to have a rehabilitation system instead of, punishing their prisoners or the criminals within their country as well, which is why they have included rehabilitation as an important part of their prisons, right? Now, when you take a prison, why we punish someone is to discipline their body, right? So locking someone up in, or even if you take extreme punishments that were used in the past, like the electric chair, you would realize that that is to discipline your body, for you to learn to control your body. But with the rehabilitation system, it is more for you to discipline your soul rather than your body, because ultimately what happens is you decide to make these decisions. If you decide, if you have murdered someone, the physical act is a result of how you think, how your brain functions. And that is exactly why we focus on disciplining the soul before disciplining the body, right? And disciplining the soul could help in so many ways to actually discipline the body ultimately, right? And this is exactly what rehabilitation does to a person, right? And this can also improve a person's character, right? Ultimately, rehabilitation was initially introduced to reform and improve a person's character, which could prevent them from re-offending, which could also help them as a person develop, right? Ultimately, what does the government want for its society? What does the legal bodies want for our society? And that is for our people to have a better lifestyle, for people to actually be living their life to the fullest, right? And for a person to be living their life to the fullest, the best way to possibly do that is by improving their character and making the necessary changes they need to be making, so that they do not engage in crime. Let's take a look at the crimes that we commonly see, right? Let's think about theft, think about murder. And if we think about these crimes that are constantly more common in general, we see that it's because of a person's lack of I think, control over mind and body, right? And this overall is also because they have certain needs. Now, when you take theft, if someone is stealing something, there is a higher chance of a person stealing something because they do not have it, and a need has to be met. And for that need to be met, they need to somehow, adjust and find a way to meet that need, and that sometimes for them means, theft, right? And overall, when we look at this, we kind of tend to realize that, people are basically making these choices because certain needs are not met. Sometimes it's because a mental need is not met, right? If you take murder, it's because, for their emotional health, something is becoming a barrier, right? And for them to be able to fix that, they need some help from outside. This could be psychological help, this could be therapy, this could be because, they do not have education and so they can't find a job, and that is exactly why they're stealing. So because of all of this, rehabilitation is something that could help that individual handle their life better, in return not commit a crime, right? So if you look at rehabilitation programs as well, you will realize that most of them are things like academic programs, vocational training, and also employment opportunities. And this could definitely help a person develop their life in so many ways, right? Giving them that extra time and attention to develop their knowledge on the world, right? Giving them that training to go out into this world and work could definitely help a person in so many ways, right? So if you look at rehabilitation in general, it is something that should be included in justice systems, in within the legal bodies of all countries, because it definitely can help not only that individual person actually reach the root cause of their action, because there was a reason they committed that crime, and that intention is something that we're dealing with when we have rehabilitation, right? And on the other hand, we're also improving the lifestyles of people around them, because you're going to make them an asset to society by giving them training, right? Be it through, a vocational training, or be it through employment opportunities, or be it through academic programs that are offered to them, right? Overall, you are bettering them, and you're also making them an asset to society. And preventing them from committing crimes means, as a legal body of a country, you have made the best decision. You are also playing your role actively to improve the lifestyle of individuals within your state, right? This necessarily means that rehabilitation is definitely something that needs to be done, and it is a key feature. In fact, it is a very, very important key feature of the modern UK criminal justice system as well, right? And if you take a comparison between UK, US, and Norway, Norway has one of the lowest, and in fact, the lowest criminal rate in the world, right? And this is because Norway has an amazing rehabilitation system. Now, on the other hand, US focuses on punishing rather than rehabilitation, right? Because the US focuses on retribution and not rehabilitation, crime rates tend to be higher than in Norway, which shows that, ultimately punishing is not going to be helping address the root cause of the problem. It's not necessarily, playing the role it should be playing within a justice system, right? Now, as much as the US focuses on punishment and not rehabilitation, UK is a country that focuses on both rehabilitation and punishment. And because UK has decided to employ both methods within its justice system, UK tends to hold sort of like a middle ground when it comes to crime rates within countries, right? Because you have Norway that is amazingly like up there with the lowest crime rates, and then you have UK kind of in the middle. And this shows us that rehabilitation is definitely a much more effective method of dealing with crimes rather than punishing criminals for the mistakes that they have made. With that being said, we have more interesting discussions coming up under rehabilitation and what could possibly make rehabilitation definitely better than punishment. And we'd also love to hear what you feel about this. Do share your thoughts on it. Do share your ideas. Comment and engage with us right here on Relax Radio. I will be right back here. This is Sala with you on the Social Roundup.
Climb Mount Everest. That is one of that's in my bucket list. You're laughing, but that is the facts right there. I'd love to do that. That is something I'm looking forward to do, hopefully.
Climb Everest.
Mount Everest. I mean, okay, not the very tip of Mount Everest, maybe the base camp at least.
You're talking about mental health. Well, if you went out and got some exercise in the fresh air, that will improve your mental health. It will make you feel better.
That's true. That is true. I wholeheartedly agree. But then for some people, it's how do you find the motivation to, especially when it comes to riding a bicycle, to do it again and again and again and again? It's a cycle that you have to be used to. How do you do it? What makes you wake up in the morning and decide, hey, I'm gonna pick my bike up today. I'm gonna cycle. What makes you want to do that?
What makes me want to do that?
Yeah. What do you like? What could you give listeners, like people listening in right now? What kind of tip could you give them?
Well, the first tip I would give them, if you haven't tried it before, try it. It can open up new horizons. It'll make you fitter. It will definitely make you fitter. Cycling is one of the best forms of aerobic exercise you can do.
It sounds like, I mean, if you think about it, yeah, it sounds like great fun. Because what essentially you're trying to say is also at the same time, when you, if you look at it from this perspective, with regards to mental health, especially when you look at it with mental health, this is another way to fight it. I feel like you go outside, you meet more people, you interact with, socially, you will interact with more people, and you're keeping fit, you're making connections, you're breathing in the good and exhaling the bad. I feel like that's a great thing right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got a better way with words than I have, I'll tell you. But you're quite right. What you say there. You're quite right.
I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time. I mean, hey, you'll get the hang of it.
I've been doing it for about 10 minutes now, so yeah.
That I can never really understand people staying in one room the whole day when you can have the world to see. I am a traveler. I travel. I love traveling. Traveling is just one of the things I do. And yeah, on top of my bucket list was, to one time, hopefully when I get there, go to Nepal and climb Mount Everest. That is that's in my bucket list. You're laughing, but that is the facts right there. I'd love to do that. That is something I'm looking forward to do, hopefully.
Climb Everest.
Mount Everest. I mean, okay, not the very tip of Mount Everest, maybe the base camp at least.
Base camp, yeah.
At least.
Would you be able to cycle there?
Oh.
Welcome back to the social roundup with Sala right here on Relaks Radio. We've been talking about an interesting topic, which is rehabilitation versus retribution, right? And we would love to hear what you feel about this topic, or in general, how have you been? And are you with us today, listening to us on Relaks Radio? So do let us know. Comment on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch as well. You can even download our app on your phone and you can tune in with us 24/7, because Relaks Radio is right here with you all the time. And we bring in different topics for you, different discussions that we hope to, talk about, from travel to entertainment to self-love to business to even social issues, right? So depending on whatever you may be interested in, we are here to give you that content. And if there's something that you would love for us to talk about as well, do feel free to comment and let us know. And we are going to make our best efforts to bring what you want to you, right? And with that being said, we have been on an interesting topic about rehabilitation and retribution. So I think one thing that we need to think about is we need to compare both before we make a decision. As much as so far I've been showing how much of support I give rehabilitation over retribution, we need to take a look at both situations to understand which definitely may be the better option, right? Now, through rehabilitation, the re-entry of the offender into society is something that could be seen as well. It makes it much more easier for the offender, because ultimately you are basically telling people that, look, this person, well, let's give them another chance. We've tried to help them improve their mental and physical health, and now we think it's time up to give them a chance and let them into society, right? And because that option is open in rehabilitation, it's definitely a better option than punishment, because ultimately when you punish someone and let them out of let them out into society, they are kind of expected to do that by themselves, and they're just seen as someone who has been punished rather than someone who has been prepared to step into society again. So they are always seen for the offense that they have committed, rather than an individual who was given a chance to fix themselves after a mistake or error that they have made, right? So punishments do not help the offender ultimately re-enter or step into society as a new person, as a person who has addressed address the root cause of their actions as well, right? If you take a look at rehabilitation, it's also something that is used mostly in juvenile offenders rather than adult offenders. And this is really important because, the younger you are, the longer you have to live and survive in society. And that basically means that, punishing someone, or punishing especially a young kid, isn't going to solve anything, right? Especially when you are young, you tend to have lack of experience with life, and this could be the reason you made these decisions, right? And because this could be the reason you've made these decisions, rehabilitation is something that could definitely help. It could help you, adjust your thought process and understand why you made that decision and why that decision could possibly be wrong, and then make on the amendments that need to be made to step into society again, right? Now, this is definitely why juvenile offenders need rehabilitation over punishment as well. But on the other hand, we see that punishment is mostly used among adult offenders rather than juvenile offenders. And this would ideally, make more sense, because ultimately punishing a child is illegal, right? So you cannot put them through that system, and you cannot, expect that to give out positive results as well. Now, with rehabilitation, it offers different programs based on whatever you've committed, right? Now, for example, there is a drug addiction rehab program, but there's also a violent behavior rehab program, and there are multiple programs based on whatever crime you have committed, right? And rehabilitation will address the root cause based on whatever the crime you have committed, which definitely means it's a special system that focuses on what could, individually focuses on whatever you need to be addressing. Now, on the other hand, punishments do not usually have a followed set program, right? The offenders are expected to work on themselves. They are, supposed to reflect on their behavior on themselves. And in fact, they are, kind of the prison system is kind of strict on individuals, and they expect them to, work by themselves, but not give them that extra support that they actually need. Because if this individual is deciding to make these extreme decisions, that means they're not in control of their mind, they're not in control of their body, which means that they need external help to be able to fix that about themselves, right? So if we're going to punish them instead of give them, that support, that extra support that they need through rehabilitation, it definitely isn't going to fix the problem as well, right? The next thing is also that rehabilitation programs are less costly and more effective. Now, this is something we definitely need to think about, because if something is more less costly and more effective, why are we doubting it? Like, I really don't understand, because as a country, as the functioning, as a country that needs to be functioning smoothly, you will definitely make the choices that are best for your country economically, socially, and politically, right? And if rehabilitations is, economically effective, and it is also socially effective, because ultimately it has reduced crime rates in comparison to, punishments, right, which we see with Norway, then why are we not considering rehabilitation and giving it the due recognition much more than what we are giving it right now, right? Now, on the other hand, punishments are definitely more costly, right? You would see that per prisoner, the costs are definitely much more higher than in comparison to rehabilitation, which tells us that ultimately rehabilitation is definitely a better option than punishment, because it would help an offender ultimately become a peaceful citizen and live a normal life. Then why aren't we making this society, right? Why aren't we making this decision for our society, right? Secondly, we also see that as a society, it is also everyone's responsibility to help that person fix whatever could be, wrong with them. And because of that, as a society, we should also push for our governing bodies to make this decision for our society, for our people, to make rehabilitation much more prominent than what it is already, because it has that power to fix us. It has that power to make an influence on these individuals and our society as well. So, which is exactly why, as a society, we have a responsibility to make sure that our governing bodies are making the best choice for us ultimately, right? One way or the other, the criminal is going to be part of our society, because imprisonment is a death sentence. Death sentence sentence is very much different, right? And they're going to be integrated into a society one day. And when they are put back into a society, they have to be making the best choices for our society. Our governing bodies cannot be monitoring them continuously, right? So because we can't be monitoring them continuously, we need to make sure that we're making the best choices, and we are making sure and guaranteeing that when this person who has committed this crime steps into society, they are definitely not going to make the same mistake again. And this has been the case after rehabilitation programs. Many criminals who have, committed crimes, who have been put through rehabilitation programs, have gone into society, stepped into society, and there has been more peace and fewer crimes in comparison to when a person has been punished. Now, when someone is punished, there definitely with that comes, anger, resentment, and sort of being closed up and wanting to commit the crime again as well. So definitely rehabilitation would be a good answer to it than punishment as well, right? We also need to think about the severity and context of the punishment as well, right? Now, when we take children, we punish them. We tend to punish the children not because we want to hold them, not because we want to see them, not because we want to sort of, our goal isn't to hurt them physically, right? Our goal isn't just to punish them only, but it's also for them to make them realize that whatever they have done has, is something that they're not supposed to be doing, right? And even with, punishing prisoners or punishing criminals, it is the same case. The end goal is to reduce the crime rate. So to make sure that they don't do what they have done prior, right? What they have done before, right? Similar to how we would punish a kid and say, don't make that choice, right? But this is exactly why rehabilitation would be a better answer to this, because when we tell them, look, you don't have to make that mistake, because we're going to help you fix what made you make that decision to make that mistake. Wow, that's a lot of makes in a sentence. You would basically be helping them fix that about themselves through rehabilitation. And that should be the case even with kids, right? You would ask them, look, why did you throw a tantrum? What was bothering you? Okay, but do you think a tantrum is the way to go about it? Do you think that getting angry is the way to get what you want? No. Then how exactly would you do it? Walking them through that process is in a way rehabilitation, unlike making them go to the corner and stand and watch the wall for a little while, which could make them feel like they are being punished rather than actually addressing the root cause, which could be something else, something completely different, something you can't punish them for and expect them to change about themselves, right? So it is ultimately important for us to avoid punishment and promote rehabilitation because of these reasons, because punishment also has certain consequences. It makes a person more aggressive and violent, and they start to get angry, and that really isn't going to help them in any way, nor is it going to help our society in any way, right? And that would definitely mean that when someone is punished, it's not going to have an impact on them, because ultimately their mind is going to tell them that, look, this is just very temporary, but ultimately it hasn't addressed my root cause. So consequences are normal, and everyone faces consequences for the decisions they make, and so they get used to it, which we will be talking about in detail right here on the Social Roundup right after this break.
One of the easiest ways to increase your net worth is to ensure that you have higher cash flows. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to not buy things on hire purchase, not buy things over months and months because you can't afford them now, but you want it. It's kind of that delayed gratification. Rather than buy that couch, that car, that stereo, that computer, whatever item, and pay it off over 12, 24, 36 months at an interest rate, rather invest that money, make do with what you've got, and then after 12, 24, 36 months, take the money that you've now invested and buy that good. An asset could be anything that appreciates or reduces a tax bill. So it could still be a liability, but it reduces their tax bill. And I'm not going to go into the technicalities because that's out of our remit here. However, for our use or our purpose, what we are talking for the listeners here is I would put this definition of an asset forward. An asset is anything that increases your income. Anything.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, if you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods. They're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends, and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK.
Back here on the social roundup with Sala on Relaks Radio. We'd love to have you engage in the conversations that we're having right here. So do feel free to comment on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and even Twitch. Engage with us and tell us how your day has been. Tell us what you think about the topics we are discussing right here. We're here to give you content from travel to entertainment to business to social issues to self-love as well. And we have more topics ranging, from self-love to entertainment to everything that I just mentioned, right? And we'd love to have you engage with us. Tell us what you think about these topics. Tell us what you would love to hear from us and what exactly you are looking for as well, right? With that being said, we've been having an interesting discussion on punishment and rehabilitation right here. We spoke about how the UK system has a combination of both punishment and rehabilitation for the criminals in their prisons, right? So we need to be discussing more in detail as to what exactly happens and what exactly this punishment is, what exactly this rehabilitation is, and where we're heading with this, right? Now, one thing that we really need to think about is that punishment doesn't necessarily mean that, you are putting them through something. Sometimes it's a little things in a prison that could make you feel like you are punished. And this could lead to you alienating yourself from society, becoming aggressive, and even, running away from situations as well, right? So we need to understand that sometimes severe punishment isn't going to help these prisoners in any way. If at all, if someone has committed a crime and they are put into prison and put through this punishment, the fear of the prison will also fade away from their mind. The fear of being punished will also fade away from their mind, which is actually really, really dangerous, right? Because ultimately what we need to be seeing is that, our society, our individuals from our society are not scared, are scared of the legal system, are scared of the criminal justice system, so they won't make the same mistake. But because this fear will fade away, because they're getting used to it and being exposed to it too much will actually make them fear it less, right? And ultimately it'll only end up with them committing the crime more often than they have before as well, right? So it is important for us to understand that getting used to punishment basically means that you wouldn't care. And we can simply understand this from how we are treated at home, right? When our parents punish us for the mistakes we make, then we also tend to realize that, ultimately we get used to the punishment and we're like, okay, what, you're going to ground me for another 2 weeks? Like, you haven't grounded me already for another 2 weeks, right? That is the reaction we're going to be giving to our parents. And that is similar to what would happen in a prison as well. What, I get locked in for 6 months? Okay, I've done this before, I've done it for longer, and so I do not fear it anymore. And that is what happens basically with criminals who end up getting punished as well, which is exactly why we need to understand that sometimes, maybe especially in this case, that imprisoning someone, putting someone through that may not necessarily be the answer to solving the situation, solving, addressing the root cause of these crimes as well, right? So what we need to understand is that, ultimately these punishments are not going to necessarily address it, right? Another thing is, we also need to talk about what possibly could mean, what they could possibly mean through punishment when we put someone in prison, right? Because when you put someone in prison, the harsh conditions of the prison, harsh conditions as in the aggressive behavior that they're exposed to, other prisoners intimidating them, other prisoners, making them feel uncomfortable, then the fact that it is overly crowded and poorly managed could also be, are also forms of punishment, right? We also see the rude behavior of jail staff and guards, which could also be making the prisoners feel really uncomfortable. And that, I think, in general, having living in that kind of condition is in itself a punishment, right? So it is very important for us to keep in mind that ultimately, just being in prison, you don't necessarily have to be put through punishment. Just being in prison in itself is definitely something that is exhausting, that is a punishment, right? So being exposed to people with that sort of negative energy, being exposed to the officials who are sort of being harsh on you, aggressive with you, and rude to you, and then also having prisoners who are, with you, who tend to sort of get competitive and who are not scared to hurt you, living in that kind of condition in itself is something that is a punishment. So why exactly are we looking to, go find other forms to punish these individuals as well? Like, are we getting anywhere with that, right? So we need to understand that, just being in prison in itself may be definitely not maybe, definitely hard on the criminals who decide to make this, who have made this mistake, right? So it is important for us to understand that we now need to be focusing. Okay, fine, we put them in prison because they made a mistake. We cannot let them loose or let them just be out there in society. Fine, we confine them within a space, within the control of the government and within the control of the governing bodies, right? But now what exactly do we do, right? Once we are in control, once we are constantly watching them, it is important for us to address the root cause, right? Which is why we need to be giving them education skills and helping them improve their mental health with the support of, with the consultations of psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists, whoever it may be, so that, you are ultimately addressing and disciplining, helping them discipline their soul and mind, and ultimately through that discipline, their body, right? So this definitely is something that we need to keep in mind. Another thing that we also need to take a look at is setting an example. Now, while we punish people, I definitely think that, it is to kind of set the example to society, saying, well, this is what happens if you decide to make this mistake. Let's look at the Saudi system. Right now in Saudi, there is a public execution of criminals, so that, society sees what sort of consequences they would face if they decide to make the same mistake, right? So because of that, it is important for us to keep that in mind. Setting an example is exactly what society is trying to do, what governing bodies are trying to do for their society by punishing someone. But is this the best way to set an example, right? If at all, if we really think about it, I think crime is kind of romanticized. Being a criminal is romanticized by media in so many ways, right? Be it the movies, be it the TV series, be it, in general, the music, the kind of things that we're exposed to really promote crimes, right? If you take a look at the music that is made with with promoting the use of drugs, use of substance, or if you look at movies, if you look at TV series, Money Heist, which actually had a lot of influence on youngsters because everyone started, getting interested in robbing a bank. And then you also have this whole mafia culture with movies like 365, uh, I don't remember the movie's name, 365, right? And if you look at other movies as well, you have a lot of these cultures where, you promote crimes and you think it's something cool to be done, right? Especially among youngsters. If you take the TV series On My Block, which also basically, romanticizes the idea of mafia, but ultimately through the TV series, they make them understand that, look, even though it is romanticized, it is not something that you should be engaging yourself in, because it has severe consequences, because it could mean that you are getting into a dangerous situation, not just, with your country, not just with the governing bodies, but even being involved in those circles, just being involved with people who are comfortable in engaging in crimes basically means that you're putting your life in danger, right? So this whole setting the example is something we really need to think about as a society, because we have continuously, set this wrong example through media, through, through this sort of system in which we sort of push for feeling cool through crimes, right? Even with mainstream music, like I was saying, it is something that we push for. And that is exactly why we need to reconsider, think about this, think why exactly we're doing this, and really think about what exactly we are setting as an example. Now, on the other hand, if we really think about, promoting rehabilitation, promoting, getting people to accept who they are and also come to peace with the fact that, what, maybe I have this situation and it is hard to live through this situation, but how exactly do I address this? Or these mental health problems that I'm dealing with, how exactly do I address these, right? So if you actually have a rehabilitation system in which you are promoting to deal with your mental health situation, then that is definitely the best way to set an example, especially to the youngsters in our society, right? In a society where toxicity is promoted, toxicity is romanticized, being toxic is looked up to, where people are attracted to toxic people, even with this whole culture of, being attracted to criminals, it is kind of really sad, right? Which is exactly why we need to change this system, change the way we think, change the way youngsters think, change the way every one of us in society sees the world, right? And for that, we need to start saying, look, I know this might sound out of this world and it might sound a little cringe. Being healthy is actually cool. Now, I know it sounds very cringe when I say this, because trust me, I am one of those youngsters who was super, super into this whole toxic culture as well. Like, I was fascinated with these movies, I was fascinated with, all these TV series, and I would think it was cool to be attracted to someone who was toxic. I thought it was cool to be someone who was toxic, right? And walking out of it and being with healthy people and just taking on a healthy life has really taught me a lot of things about myself, about the world, and how actually we are doing what is bad for us, which is, not necessarily the best decision to make, right? So it is really important for us to set the right example for individuals in our community, in our society, so that they are making the best choice in return, which is definitely going to mean that our society is going to be a healthy place for all of us to live in, right? With that being said, we will be going into further discussion about rehabilitation and retribution, and we'd love to hear what you feel about this as well. So do feel free to comment and engage with us and let us know what you think about this topic as well, right? With that being said, we're going for a small break. This is Sala on the Social Roundup.
But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Oh, you didn't do very well. And they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, he might say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He said to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it." And that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Social Roundup with Sala right here on Relaks Radio. Now, if you are here with us, do comment on our Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitch as well. Engage in these discussions with us because we'd love to hear what you think about the topics that we're bringing right here for you on Relaks Radio. And we would love to also hear what you would love for us to talk about as well, because we have a range of themes that we talk about, range of topics that we bring to you on a daily basis 24/7, and we'd love to know what you want to hear from us right here on Relaks Radio as well, right? So with that being said, we've been talking about something really interesting, which is rehabilitation versus retribution, right? And this necessarily has brought us to finally the discussion about what happens to prisoners, right? What happens to prisoners after they leave? Now, let's think about what happens to prisoners after they leave prison, especially after they are punished, right? Now, we did speak about how, prisoners ultimately, when they are punished, they're not scared to get punished anymore, which means that they will make the same mistake again. Making the same mistake again could necessarily mean that their fear of being imprisoned or being punished for their mistake is gone. And we also spoke about how this is the case with children as well. When we are children, how we get punished, we are not scared of that anymore, which makes them people who continue to commit the crime as well. Now, we've spoken about Ted Bundy before, and we've spoken about how he was put in prison multiple times and he escaped, and he continued to do the same thing because he wasn't scared of the punishment anymore, until ultimately he was put on the electric chair. Now let's think about the electric chair. Let's think about, how he was put on the electric chair, and that was a punishment that was given to him, right? Now, if you look at Ted Bundy's personality, we realize that Ted Bundy is not a normal person, right? And this is a crime. The crime that he committed was something that was very severe. He was a serial killer, and he would go around harassing, abusing, and also ultimately, finally murdering, right? And this necessarily meant that it's not something you could fix through rehabilitation as well, because he was also a manipulator and he was someone with psychological conditions that could not be cured. So because of that, the only way to go about it was definitely punishment. But we can also think about, well, is electric chair the punishment that they could have possibly gone with? But considering the time period in which the problem did happen, in which the crime did happen, it would have definitely been different to what sort of punishment which would be given right now in the current system, right? So, considering that, it is also important to be open to the idea of punishment, because certain people cannot be fixed, and that necessarily means that, psychologically, there is no way that could, we could fix them or help them fix their psychological situation, right? Which is exactly why, in certain situations, it's fear that could fix them, it's fear that would prevent them from making the same mistake again, unlike with generally how you can basically correct a person by actually helping them address what could be causing these thoughts or making them make these mistakes, right? Now, on the other hand, another possible consequence of people after being in prison stepping into society is losing their life when it comes to employment, right? So they tend to feel lost, they feel like they have no opportunity with employment, and that, ultimately they are going to not be able to get a job out in this world. And even if they were to have the motivation and say, you know what, I'm going to get a job, like I'm going to do it, I'm motivated and I'm going to get a job somehow, even if they were to say that, there is definite consequences, because they have a black mark on their CV. They do have, their legal records in which it is said that they were imprisoned once, and not just imprisoned, they were also, in prison for so long that they have lost touch with working out in this world, right? Being integrated into society, social skills, and overall just knowing that they are a criminal is enough of a reason for companies or for places to say, look, we don't want you working here because we're scared you'll do that with us as well. And this happens because we punish them, because we are saying, look, this is all that happened in prison. In prison, ultimately, they were being punished for the mistake they made, which means that society is not going to give them a chance, right? Now, on the other hand, if you were to take, rehabilitation, where you do give them vocational training, where you do give them, employment opportunities, and you take them through, you also give them academic training, it's going to definitely be much more different, because companies would actually consider, because sometimes you would have years of training, you would have years of knowledge that is within you. So that definitely means that you are an asset to these companies, that you are an asset to the outer world, right? So there have been evidence shown that people who have been through rehabilitation have a higher chance of being employed, rather than people who have been in prison and punished for the mistakes that they have made. So ultimately, what we need to understand is that when a person is stepping into society, when if they have been punished, the consequences of it is not just limited to them making the mistake again, or their mental health not being in the right place, because that definitely is also something. Because when you are being punished, especially in long time periods, for a long time, if you have been punished, then when you actually decide to step into society and be part of the society, that effect that it had on your mental health, the effect that being in prison or being punished has on your mental health, is definitely going to affect your lifestyle overall. Which is why it is important for us to understand that, look, you know what, ultimately it is important for us to keep in mind that punishing someone doesn't just necessarily mean that look, it's just going to be them forget making sure that they don't make that mistake again, so that they are not put through that punishment. But understanding that they can't continue their life practically there onwards could actually encourage them to sort of make the same mistake again as well. Now, even with children and inmates, with children as well, this is the case, because when children step into society, you think, well, when they were a kid, they were able to do this. When during their innocent years they have committed a crime, which could definitely mean that they are not suitable for society. Because even if in their early ages they've done this is something that could definitely mean that they are not supposed to be integrated into society. And society starts to sort of corner them and put them aside and make them feel like they are not part of this society and they do not deserve to be a part of this society, treated equally to other people, which could definitely mean that ultimately they turn to these crimes again because they say, look, you know what, society isn't treating me right, which means where do I turn to when I need that extra help, when I need that sort of extra, when I need to sort of make that move again and fix my mistake. If society isn't being supportive, I'm going to turn to the same mistake again, right? Which is the case with most of these kids as well. Most criminals end up making the same mistake again simply because society isn't willing to take them into society because of the criminal record that they've had. And sometimes even if they made the mistake only once, this is the case. Now let's talk about people who didn't even make the mistake, unjustly put into prison for a mistake that they haven't made. It is even unfair on them because they are also encouraged to commit a crime simply to feel integrated into society, which is really really unfair and sad, right? So we really need to rethink this whole retribution system, and we need to push for a complete rehabilitation system, but also keeping punishment as an option when necessary, especially in cases like Ted Bundy's case, right? So it is something for us to think about, it is something for us to consider and understand, since we've also had a very important and very interesting discussion on the pros and cons of both and how both actually function, how they actually function in prisons, and also understanding the conditions in different countries and how Norway has been successful in reducing crime rates in comparison to the US and UK. And we've also seen that the clear reason for this is because rehabilitation is an important element, and it is the only system in which they address crimes, right? Now, on the other hand, even though in the UK it is a key feature, it is definitely not the only way to deal with crime. So it is something for us to think about, and it is something for us to push for as well. With that being said, we've come to an end of this discussion for today, and we have more interesting topics coming up right here on Relax Radio on the social standard, on the social roundup with Sala. So do stay tuned, and we'll be right back with something a little bit different and interesting for you.